Okay, so here we are in FL Studio, and I've cut all the parts that I think I would need, and I'm going to show you how I figure out the tempo and the pitch I need to use to replicate this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this into view so you can see my tempo, which is at its default of 140, and I know it's going to be much less than that, so I'm going to lower it down to about 90 as a starting point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the Camera version here in my Adobe Audition, and I'm going to find a loop that I can use for timing purposes. And what you want to do is you want to get a loop that's exactly 1 bar or 2 bars and use that. So in this particular song, I know after the intro, if we listen to it.
Just Blaze. Oh baby. Killer. All the girls.
Okay, right after that intro, there's these hits that happen right here. And those hits happen to be occurring on every beat, on the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in to this area, and I'm going to see that these peaks are showing me where those hits are. And I'm going to basically start on 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm not going to include the 5th one, which is here. I'm going to go just before it starts. So now what I have is very close to a 1 bar loop, and if I play this with a loop turned on, we can hear it's pretty close. It might not be perfect, but I don't need it to be perfect because tempos are usually a round number. In other words, it's not like 93.526 when the person created this. When Just Blaze had his tempo on his MPC or whatever he used to create it, you know, he probably didn't have some fractional number. So I'm just going to get this piece here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to save it, and I can go to File, Save Selection, and save just this part. Okay, now I've already done that, so I'm not going to redo it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to load in that part into FL Studio. So I'm going to drag it in here, and here's the part. Okay, pretty loud, but there's the part. And then there's 2 ways of figuring out a tempo that I use regularly. The first thing I do is I right-click on it and select Detect Tempo, and I think I'm going to have to move this screen up a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to right-click and say Detect Tempo, and because I know this is a 1 bar loop, I know it's going to give me a very close number to what the tempo is. Okay, so it's telling me it thinks the tempo is 83.228. But if I don't think that's right, I can tell it to take another guess. And then I'll just tell it what range I think it's in. I think it's between 50 and 100, 75 to 150, etc. And I think it's between 50 and 100. So I'm just going to click that, and it's going to analyze it. And now it says, oh, this tempo is 82.721. And because I told you I didn't think it was a perfect cut, I'm just going to round it up in this case. So I'm going to say 83. Okay, so I'm going to set my tempo here to 83. And then I'm going to play the sample. and that's pretty close. So I'm going to leave it there, and then I'm going to basically work with it from there. So that's how you figure out a tempo. The other way to do it would just be to play it here and then manipulate the tempo here until you got it to loop right. Because if this was really low and I played it, you can hear that there's a space before it starts over again. So obviously it's too slow. If it was too fast, it would sound like this. And in this case, you can hear that it's not finishing before it starts again. So, you know, what I would do is I would get close and then I would start going up or down and trying to find the tempo. But since I know it's 83, I'm going to leave it at 83.